Old North's history is much more than just the night of Paul Revere's ride. Interesting stories come up often in surprising or overlooked places, like Old North's gift shop, for example. The structure is over 100 years old, first built in 1918. But there's more to its history than just its old age. The building's original function was a Waldensian chapel, named the Chapel of St. Francis of Assisi. The Waldensians are particularly noteworthy here in the North End because they were Italian Protestants, a population entirely dwarfed by the predominantly Catholic neighborhood of that time. The Waldensian sect actually predates the Reformation, beginning in the 12th century in what is today France and Italy. They were named for Peter Waldo, who stressed a simpler form of Christianity, strict adherence to the Bible, voluntary poverty, and a more decentralized structure of clergy and worship. The Catholic Church soon accused them of having heretical beliefs, and at various times they were nearly eradicated over the centuries. But they managed to survive, and eventually the Waldensians found a place within the larger Protestant Reformation. And by the end of the early 20th century, there were pockets of Waldensians in places like Italy and Switzerland, and through immigration, as far away as Boston's North End. As I mentioned, the number of Protestants in the North End at this time was very small, and that's actually where the link to Old North Church begins. The Waldensians did not have a regular dedicated church of their own. In 1914, Old North's rector, William Dewart, realized that as a fellow Protestant congregation, Old North had an opportunity to support these new immigrants to Boston. Dewart offered use of the Old North to the Waldensians on Sunday afternoons, giving the community a regular place to worship in their home neighborhood. Old North also arranged for an Italian-speaking minister, Henry Sartorio, to lead services in their primary language. The services flourished, and within a few years, plans were developing to create a place the Waldensians could call their own. The North End was wildly crowded at this time, with no real space to build, but Old North did have a small courtyard available. A Mrs. William H. Lincoln of Brookline offered to help pay for a chapel if Old North provided the land. Funds were raised, and the chapel was built. And on Thanksgiving Day, 1918, the Chapel of St. Francis of Assisi was dedicated. Symbolizing the connection between the two congregations, the Reverend Dewart spoke during the ceremony, as did the Episcopal Bishop of Massachusetts, William Lawrence, who even laid the cornerstone. During the dedication, Bishop Lawrence said that the goal was not some attempt to convert Catholics in the North End, but simply to assist their Italian Protestant cousins in their search for a regular church of their own. And here that building stands today. For years, the chapel continued to serve a small but dedicated congregation. A number of the building's original architectural elements survive today. The cross on the roof announces the building's original function, as do the haloed figures, which are possibly angels or saints, carved into the pillars, still viewable after more than a century of wear. The pillars themselves are the original craftsmanship as well. The stone lions, which are a frequent symbol used in Christian aesthetics, are a fan favorite for many visitors. The lions usually offer our best chance to introduce the story of the building. Their eye-catching appeal tends to provoke a lot of curiosity from the public. And inside, the marble railings that lead up to the steps are original as well, and would have long ago led worshipers to their pews. Today, the railings offer a rare chance to literally touch a piece of history. So what's the transition from chapel to gift shop of all things? Well, already by 1929, just a decade later, there were signs of change. Immigration restrictions in the U.S. and political unrest in Italy had stalled immigration from the home country, so while the congregation remained steady over that time, it also never truly grew. In the following decades, congregants gradually began to leave the North End for other, less crowded neighborhoods or the suburbs, a historical example of the quintessential story of immigrant acculturation over time. With an already small population to begin with, the continued outflow of Waldensians with no additional inflow of new immigrants caused the congregation to slowly evaporate. And by the 1950s, the chapel was essentially no longer in use. But while the religious need had declined, the building became essential in a new way. With the ever-rising interest in Old North's history and its connection to the American Revolution, the staff here in the 50s were in dire need of additional space in order to fully meet the demand as a historic site. Old North bought the building and it became a combined museum and retail space, then years later solely a gift shop. So in the end, the chapel returned the favor back to Old North. The building helps support the historic site today. The gift shop is an important element of preserving Old North into the future. Today, the former chapel is on the National Register of Historic Places, and the Old North Church and Historic Site always seeks opportunities to shine a spotlight on its interesting history. Of course, the building wasn't the location of some earth-shattering event that changed the course of history. It's simply the story of an organization doing what they could to make life a bit easier for their community. It helps us learn about the lesser-known community whose story could get lost over time. That's a story worth telling now more than ever.